Well, guys, it's finally that time of the year. It's time for a new NFL season. And for the 7th time in a row, I am going to do my weekly picks for the 2022 NFL season. I am looking forward to it as I already got all the week 1 games already set up. Man, it's going to be hard updating all of them as I go on with the year with MTWS and all that. And of course, that is how I went last year. 170, 101 to 1 with a 62.7 accuracy. So I think that was worse than I did in 2020. So hopefully 2022 will be better than 2021. Oh man, I cannot wait for the night. So let's get to my week 1 picks, as this is going to be exciting. I cannot wait for the night as he starts with a huge matchup, maybe a Super Bowl preview perhaps, as it's the Bills at the Rams for the first time since 2016, as is that 17th game matchup too. Anyways, the Bills won the last 2, the Rams haven't beaten them since 2012, and they haven't won at home since 1983. So anyways, the Bills, of course, hoping to do better than last year. They were actually better than they were in 2020, I thought. They didn't win the games like they should have. They underachieved in that regard. And of course the Rams, they were one of my Super Bowl picks last year, and they actually got it, even though I wasn't fully convinced going into the playoffs last year that they were going to do that. So yeah, this is going to be interesting as hell to see how they're going to do. But this was kind of a tough one to pick, but in the end, after thinking about it for a little bit, I think I'm going to pick the Bills for this one because they are like one of the best teams statistically in the league last year. So we'll see. Maybe the Rams will actually get to start off the year 1-0. The last time a team the Super Bowl champion host a game that lost was the 2017 Patriots. So then we get to the Sunday action, starting off with, funny enough, a direct rematch from last year, as the Saints are at the Falcons, just like the Falcons hosted the Saints to end off the season last year. The Saints won the last one. The Falcons haven't beaten them since 2021, and they haven't beaten them at home since 2017. So the Saints, after missing the playoffs last year for the first time in 5 years, hoping to do better this year. I still think Winston going down with injury last year is the main reason why they didn't make the playoffs, because if he didn't get injured, I think they would have. Hell, they might have even challenged the Buccaneers for the division title. And the Falcons, of course, I do not really have any hype for them whatsoever. I think they're going to be like one of the worser teams in the league. Don't really see much going in their way. So I'm going to pick the Saints for this one. Then we get to probably the most interesting matchup of week 1, at least for the 1 p.m. games, as it's the Browns at the Panthers for the first time since 2014. The Browns won the last one. The Panthers haven't beaten them since 2014, and the Browns have never won in Charlotte. So they're hoping to do that for the first time. So the Browns are hoping to do better last year with no offensive injuries like with Baker Mayfield. But of course, he's gone now. Ironically to the Panthers, this is the second straight season the Panthers host the opponent that they just took their quarterback from, just like they did the Jets last year. As Baker Mayfield's on the Browns. Now, of course, the Browns have Deshaun Watson, but of course, he's missing the first 11 weeks of the season now. So they're kind of gimped in that regard. So the Browns season, which if Watson plays, and he actually plays very well like he did in 2020, the Browns actually could be a scary team in the future. But of course, he's not going to play for like most of the season, and he's probably going to be rusty to start off the year. So it's probably going to be a lost season, unfortunately, for the Browns. Now, despite them, the Browns not having Watson, and I'm sure Baker Mayfield's going to ball out to get revenge on the Browns, I still am going to pick the Browns because they're overall a better team. It'll probably be a defensive slugfest at the end. Then it'll be another rematch from last year, as the 49ers are at the Bears for the second year in a row. The 49ers won the last one, as the Bears haven't beaten them since 2018, and they haven't won at home since 2016. So trying to change that around. The 49ers, of course, remember, just fell short of the Super Bowl, hoping to make it back this year with now Trey Lance, which will be interesting to see. Meanwhile, the Bears, I don't really see much hope for them whatsoever right now. So I'm just going to be picking the 49ers. Although, the only thing I'm worried about with the 49ers is Trey Lance. Will it actually show up? He did play good he start like 2 games last year? Or pretty much played like 3 games. He did good, but that's a very small sample size compared to starting a full season. That's the only concern I have right now for the 49ers, but I think they'll still beat the Bears. Then, it's the Steelers at the Bengals, as the Bengals won the last 3. The Steelers haven't beaten them since 2020, and they haven't won in Cincinnati since 2019. As, of course, the Steelers start a new era with Big Ben gone, as they start off with Trubisky to start off the season. Meanwhile, the Bengals are going to begin try to avoid their hungover from the Super Bowl as well, to try and make it back. This is going to be a tough year for them. And to repeat, because the AFC North, I think, has gotten much better from last year. And they're going to have the hangover, too, probably. Meanwhile, the Steelers, of course, they're going to probably struggle this year without Big Ben. And I really did not see much good things going for them. But, of course, as always, the Steelers will always find some way to get over 500, since they haven't had a losing season since 2003. This one is actually tough to predict. Yes, I know the Bengals swept the Steelers last year, and they crushed them in both games. But I just don't really see that happen right now. And I actually have a funny feeling that I think the Steelers could go in there and pull off the upset. But I think maybe I'll still just barely pick the Bengals. But I will not be surprised if the Steelers get it. Alright, then go to the next set of games. As next up is another rematch from last year. The Eagles at the Lions. As Eagles won the last one. Lions haven't beaten them since 2019. And they haven't won at home since 2016. So, of course, the Eagles, after making the playoffs last year, trying to make it back and one up the Cowboys and win the NFC East. Not so sure how they're going to really do it because I don't have much confidence in them. Meanwhile, the Lions, I have a lot more confidence in after going 3-13-1 last year, hoping to do much better this year. But unfortunately for the Lions, the Eagles crushed them really bad last year. I don't really see the Eagles getting worse enough to lose, nor do I think the Lions are going to be good enough to beat the Eagles after last year. So I'm going to pick the Eagles for this one. So then we get to the Colts at the Texans. The Colts won the last 4. The Texans haven't beaten them since 2019. As the Texans, of course, no changes as far as I'm concerned like the last 3 years. Meanwhile, the Colts, hoping with Matt Ryan and the Titans regressing that they'll finally make the playoffs and win the AFC South after 8 years. And of course, Colts are superior. They destroyed the Texans last year, so I'm picking the Colts, as they're trying to get to 1-0 for the first time since 2013. Then it's the Patriots at the Dolphins, another last game rematch from last year. The Dolphins won the last 3. The Patriots haven't beaten them since 2020, and they haven't won Miami since 2019. So the Patriots, of course, made the playoffs last year, hoping to improve upon that this year, and hoping Mac Jones will have a massive improvement from last year. The Dolphins, meanwhile, trying to rebuild from last year's disappointment and trying to get a first straight win season, this time make the playoffs. But I don't really have much confidence in the Dolphins this year. But I still am going to pick them over the Patriots, as right now they seem to have their number. Alright, then it's the Ravens at the Jets for the first time since 2016. The Ravens won the last one. The Jets haven't beaten them since 2016. And the Ravens haven't won in East Rutherford since 2010, even with the Giants too. So, of course, the Ravens hoping to bounce back from their terrible season last year with all the injuries. Meanwhile, the Jets are hoping to recover after the last few years of struggle. And the funny thing is, Zach Wilson's injured, so they're going to start Joe Flacco. So, Flacco, for the first time in his career, is going up against his former team. Which, honestly, I think right now would probably be better. I think Flacco right now might be better than Wilson. So, this actually might help the Jets in that regard. But the Ravens are such a superior team that I'm going to pick the Ravens still. Then, the final 1 p.m. game. As it's the Jaguars at the Commanders. First time I'll be saying that since 2014. The Commanders won the last 4. The Jaguars haven't beaten them since 2002. And the Jaguars... the Jaguars never beaten the Commanders, I think, they never beaten them in Landover. So anyways, the Jaguars, they've had the worst record the last 2 years, hoping to have a good year, and hoping Trevor Lawrence has a second-year rebound. Meanwhile, the Commanders, I don't know what to say about them, unfortunately. Even with Wentz, who would probably be better than Taylor Heineke and all of them, I just don't really have much faith in them right now. And I honestly think this could go either way. I could easily see the Jaguars maybe pulling off the upset win right here. But I think the Commanders might be overall still a better team, so I'm going to pick the Commanders still. Alright, then we get down to the final 6 games. As we get to the 4 p.m. games, starting off with the Giants at Titans for the first time since 2014. The Titans won the last one. The Giants haven't beaten them since 2014, and the Titans haven't won at home against them since 2006. Remember that 21-0 choke that the Giants had. So anyways, the Giants, I do not have really any faith in them whatsoever. I think they're going to be pretty much exactly the same as they were last year. Meanwhile, the Titans surprisingly got the number 1 overall seed last year, even though they weren't that good for it. And then with Derrick Henry missing the entire season, I don't really have much faith in the Titans this year. I don't know if Tannehill will recover, because he did not play good last year compared to his first 2 seasons. He needs to do that, but of course he doesn't have his star wide receiver from last year, and of course they're going to have to rely on Derrick Henry this year, and who knows how he's going to recover from his injury, because he didn't play at all in the regular season once his injury went down. So if the Titans are going to want any shot to make it back to the playoffs, they're going to have to rely on Henry and Tannehill playing good. I just don't really see that right now. But the Titans are still overall a better team than the Giants, so I'm going to pick the Titans for that. Then, probably the big matchup of the 4 p.m. games. The Chiefs at the Cardinals for the first time since 2014. The Chiefs won the last one. The Cardinals haven't beaten them since 2014, and the Chiefs haven't won in Glendale since 2006. So the Chiefs, of course, after that terrible start last year, and then that strong finish, hoping to make it back to a 5th straight AFC Championship, and this time make the Super Bowl. He went out Tyreek Hill. The Cardinals, meanwhile, remember, they were the last undefeated team last year, 7-0 before they finished 11-6 and got destroyed in the playoffs by the Rams. Hoping to do well, but of course they're going to have to struggle without DeAndre Hopkins the first 6 weeks. I don't really see much chance for the Cardinals right now, so I'm picking the Chiefs. Then, it's a rematch from last year, too, the last week of the season, although it's in Los Angeles now, as it's the Raiders at the Chargers. The Raiders won the last one. The Chargers haven't beaten them since last year, and the Raiders haven't won in Los Angeles since 2020, as the Raiders, of course, made the playoffs after that win last year, although I don't think they're as good as their record indicated last year. I think they got really lucky to get in. The Chargers, meanwhile, kind of disappointed. I thought they were going to do really well last year, but they went 9-8 and missed the playoffs, as they really need to finally make it here. I'm going to pick the Chargers for this one. Then, it's going to be the Packers at the Vikings, as the Packers won the last one. The Vikings haven't beaten them since last year, and the Packers haven't won in Minneapolis since 2020. So, of course, the Packers went 1 and done in the playoffs last year. Aaron Rodgers came back after all the hoopla he had in 2021, hoping to get that Super Bowl this year since they keep missing out on it. Meanwhile, the Vikings, remember last year, guys, the Vikings went 8-9, but all their losses but one game against the Packers were within a touchdown. So, if anything, they theoretically could have gone 16-1, believe it or not. So, the Vikings are a really weird team to figure out. And another thing, too, is these teams really do go back and forth the last few years. The Vikings are 3-2, I think, the last 5 years hosting the Packers, but it really could go either way with these two. Oh, man, that's going to be a tough one to pick. But I think I might just edge out and pick the Packers for this one. Alright, and we get to Sunday night, a rematch from the kickoff game last year. The Buccaneers at the Cowboys for the first time since 2018. The Buccaneers won the last one. The Cowboys haven't beaten them since that 2018 game. And the Buccaneers have not won in Arlington since 2001. So the Buccaneers, of course, had their best season last year, record-wise, but they choked in the playoffs against the Rams. And Brady came back and hoping to maybe get a second title with him before he maybe retires after this year. The Cowboys, meanwhile, had a strong bounce-back year, but as always, like the Cowboys, choked in the playoffs. So they're hoping to do better in that regard, too. So, remember, last year's game went right down to the wire between these two. And you know what? I'm going to pick the Cowboys for this one. At home this time, and not sure if the Buccaneers got any better from last year, so pick the Cowboys for this one. And then finally, wrap it up with Monday night, as the Broncos are at the Seahawks for the first time since 2014. The Broncos won the last one. The Seahawks haven't beaten them since 2014. And the Broncos haven't won in Seattle since 2002. As Russell Wilson is going to start off the year against his former team. Oh, rip the Seahawks fans. That's going to suck. As with Russell Wilson now, the Broncos are kind of like in the same position they were 10 years ago with Peyton. They have all the pieces in place. All they need is a quarterback to get them back into the playoffs and maybe be a Super Bowl contender. And Russell Wilson, they better make it worth it. I mean, make it happen with him now. So they are definitely a scary threat this season. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, after having their first losing season since 2011 last year, they've lost everything pretty much left of their main players. So I really think the Seahawks right now are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. So I'm picking the Broncos for this one. All right. So those are my Week 1 picks. I cannot wait for Bills and Rams tonight to start the season. So to wrap up the video, my picks are Bills over the Rams, Saints over the Falcons, Browns over the Panthers, 49ers over the Bears, Bengals over the Steelers, Eagles over the Lions, Colts over the Texans, Patriots over the Dolphins over the Patriots, Ravens over the Jets, Commanders over the Jaguars, Titans over the Giants, Chiefs over the Cardinals, Chargers over the Raiders, Packers over the Vikings, Cowboys over the Buccaneers, and Broncos over the Seahawks. So see you guys next Thursday for